What up, you sticks? My name is Brody McPherson. I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, and I play out at Cabot Cape Breton. Welcome to Golf Smarter, boys.
Hi, I'm Thad Thomas from Cottage Grove, Minnesota, and I play at River Oaks Golf Course. Welcome to Golf Smarter.
Episode 1024.
When I was writing, the publisher that I worked for owned a little golf magazine in Philadelphia, and I was the staff writer for that magazine, and I interviewed Bob Rotella once. It was really cool. It was me, another writer, and him for like an hour just firing questions at him. He said if you went to the range at a tour event and you took away the nameplate so you didn't know who anybody was, and you just went up and down and watched each person swing the golf club, except for like Jim Furyk or Tiger or somebody like that, who you knew what their swing was like, you wouldn't know if they were the 5th best player in the world or the 505th best player in the world, because they hit the ball so well. And so something had to separate them. And it's the mental game. Can you do it when it matters most? Can you manage your way around the golf course? Can you swallow your pride and play for 4 rather than going for a pin tucked behind a bunker or over the water hazard? So he said you can't recognize the 5th best player from the 505th best player in the world. So something has to separate them. And that's what it is. But mental game for sure.
A caddy at Merion Golf Club wrote a fun golf novel for all ages called The Phillie Phenom by Nate Oxman.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast, Nate.
Thanks, Fred. Appreciate you having me here.
Well, I'll be completely honest with you. When your publicity people reached out to me about your book, I'm like, really? I don't know about this book. It's like, they said, can you just read it and let us know? I couldn't put it down.
Oh, thanks so much.
Well, let's just say this. I read when I go to sleep, so I fall asleep reading, so I put it down all the time. But I couldn't, let me say it this way. I couldn't put it down till I finished. I had to get to the ending of this story to see how it turned out.
That's awesome. That's what I want to hear.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with this book.
Thanks. That's the whole goal. It's geared towards, younger kids, 10 to 15, but I was really hoping that adults would enjoy it too and would help spread the word for me, for their children or their grandchildren or kids at their country club or whatever. So thanks so much for your kind words, and I'm glad to see that I'm doing something right.
Well, I am a 10 to 15-year-old, so it falls right in line. Awesome. At least I act like it most of the time. But it's a unique story, and we'll get into the story because there's a lot of things in it that were golf lessons. That's why I was so intrigued about having this conversation with you. You
Sure.
really sneak in some great golf instruction on this. But give me the background story of what this book is about, or give us an overview of what the book is about.
Sure. It's a middle grade sports fiction novel, focused on golf. The main character is a 10-year-old boy named Lee Lomax, who's based on me. A lot of the stories in that book are based on my childhood growing up at this really blue-collar country club in Philadelphia that really shouldn't have been called a country club. No pool, no tennis, nothing, just golf. But I guess they wanted to sound...
So it was a private golf club.
It was a private golf club, but it was called Edgemont Country Club. And in, a crazy golf-rich, as far as private golf goes, area in Philadelphia, this place was at the bottom. And I don't think the members, it's no longer there, but I don't think the members would disagree with me on that. And my dad was a member there. He worked across the street at this safety equipment company, and I tell people all the time, there's no coincidence that he picked a golf club right across from his work. So he played there when he was younger, and then when I got old enough to play, he would bring me with him, and I just fell in love with the place. It was the place with where plumbers and electricians would tee it up with doctors and lawyers and all sorts of people, Philly sports athletes. So I kind of gathered all these stories from my childhood, just observing all these people, on the golf course, on the practice range, in the bar, and I filed them away. And then, that kind of built into this book. And I first started writing it maybe 10 years ago when my kids were little, and I was, up late at night feeding them bottles, and, I couldn't sleep after that. So I would just like kind of hammer away a few pages at a time. And then I read a book by John Strigi called When War Played Through, about how, the majors stopped, and because so many of the professional golfers, enlisted, and, they had these Red Cross exhibition matches staged around the country to raise money for the war effort. Local PGA pros or local amateurs would play against these touring professionals. And I thought it'd be cool to kind of bring that to modern times and weave 9/11 into that. So the main character, Lee, experiences 9/11 when he's home from school one day. And I kind of tie that in, bring in that Red Cross exhibition match into this country club. And, Lee's goal throughout most of the story is to get his dad to be able to be one of the participants in that match.
I figured as much, that this was something from your childhood, the way this book was reading. But I'm curious about when you said your dad worked across the street from the golf club. Well, this is a chicken and egg story.
Yeah.
What came first? Did the country club come first, or his job come first? And he was like, oh, there's a golf course across the street.
I probably didn't say that right the first time. So I guarantee he picked that job because the office was right across the street from a golf club. And then, like you, he later went into business for himself. So he runs his own business and he makes his own hours and has played golf, 2 or 3 times a week since I was a little kid. I'm 44, so for 30 years he's been playing golf 2 or 3 times a week. He and my uncle caddied on the PGA Tour before I was born in the 70s. So there was no choice, I was going to be a golfer whether I liked it or not. And, I'm happy that he put a club in my hands when I was like 8 years old. And it's been a great love affair with golf ever since.
Yeah, we use the word love affair, but we know better, Nate. We really do. Your history is, but you started playing at your dad was a caddy, your uncle was a caddy. And then did you start caddying as well before you got married, had kids, started your professional career, or how did that work?
Yep, I did. So we're lucky. Again, there's so many private clubs here in Philadelphia, and we have Merion Golf Club, top 10 club in the country, top 15 club in the world, literally right in our backyard. So when I was born in the town where Merion is, and then when we were in second grade, we moved to an adjacent town, but it's still only 1.5 miles from the club. And then when I was 14 years old, I don't remember my dad, asking me if I wanted to caddy. He just took me in his van one day and dropped me off and said, go up there and ask the caddy master if you can caddy. And I was crazy shy when I was a kid. He used to take me to PGA Tour events in the area, and the Champions Tour, I remember, was in the same kind of neck in the woods. And, Jack Nicklaus and Palmer and Chi Rodriguez and Lee Trevino was when they were like big time on the senior tour before the Champions Tour, and I would be deathly afraid to ask for their autograph, so he would have to do it. But for some reason, I was okay with going and asking for this job. I don't know if just something inside me, the caddy in me was already there, right? And so I started when I was 14, and I caddied all through high school and college. And then when I studied journalism at Penn State, and when I was looking for a full-time gig, I was still caddying, and then I found that full-time writing position. I took a couple years off, and then I went back to school to get certified to teach. And when I did that, I went back to Merion. So I pretty much have been there since 1995, with the exception of 2007, 2008. Those 2 years I took off. So 30 years roughly of carrying golf bags. Pretty great place to do it.
At Merion.
At Merion.
Wow.
Yeah.
You got to give me a story about looping at Merion.
I tell a quick ones a lot. So maybe 15 years ago, I caddied for Patty Harrington. He was like, making an appearance for some company at a charity outing on a Monday. And it was my job to drive him around in a golf cart and, play a hole with each group. And he got to number 11, which is, a famous hole in golf where Bobby Jones clinched the Grand Slam in 1930, and he stood on the tee, and he was just going to hit probably like a 5 or 6 iron down the fairway because there's a creek that wraps around and cuts off the end of the hole. makes you force carry into the green. And then he went back and got his driver, and he took like 5 steps behind the back of the tee. And I didn't know what he was doing. And then he started running toward the ball, and he did the Happy Gilmore and hit it over the green. So it was at least a 340-yard carry, and it probably ended up, traveling 360 yards or so. So that's one of my favorite stories.
That's a great one. I mean, you must have been just completely bamboozled by the fact that he's standing there, he starts running at the ball.
Yeah, I didn't know what he was going to do. He didn't announce it. He didn't say, like, watch this or anything. He just kind of did it. And I think the other guys who were playing were just like, oh, my God. But it's pretty cool. You see so many celebrities come through there. I've been lucky enough to caddy for, Troy Aikman and Darius Rucker. So I'll tell Darius Rucker's story. So I caddied for him maybe, let's see, my oldest daughter is just turned 13. So it was when my wife was pregnant with her, and I caddied for him, and then he gave us tickets to his show, and we got to go backstage afterwards, and they were about to go to the after party, and she was like, you guys are going to come, right? And I just like pointed to my wife's belly. I'm like, no, we got to get home. And he's like, well, I'll make a deal with you. If you name your baby after me, I'll pay for her to go to college. He was like, you can call her Darius or something. And we didn't end up doing it, but I caddied for him like 5 years ago, and I brought up that story. He was like, yeah. He's like, sounds like something I would say.
You didn't take him up? You could have told him. You could have given the kid the middle name or something.
I know. That's what people say. They should have like, just make it the middle name. He would have been cool with it. He was fun to caddy for, super competitive, very focused, but he was fun. Oscar Robertson I caddied for, which was pretty cool. I'm a huge basketball fan. My dad was a big basketball player and golfer. So those guys are pretty cool. And, you see so many different people come through. It's cool to be a part of it.
I'm still kind of stuck on you not naming babies. Have someone else pay for the college education.
I know, especially now, right? And
now, like, what are you thinking?
In like 5 years, it's going to be astronomical, even though I guess it already is.
It already is, yeah. I kind of had a story. I tell people that my dog that I had from the time I was 50 till like mid 60s, we named the dog Lulu, but when I got the dog, I wanted to give it a real good golf name, and we ended up, long story, I'm going to cut it down here because I've told it before, but I need to share it with you. It's like someone suggested, which name the dog after Tiger's mom, because I wanted a real good golf name for my dog, right? And I didn't want Divot and I didn't want Bogey. Yeah. It's overused. They're like, Tiger's mom. And I'm like, I don't get it. Why would I name the dog after Tiger's mom? And he goes, well, because then, her name is Coltita, and they call her Tita, and the dog's name would be Tita Green. Like, oh my God, that's great. So I've told every golfer, my dog's name is Tita Green, but her real name is Lulu. Right? Everyone knew her as Nancy.
That's cool.
Do you love the Merion golf course?
Oh yeah, it's. People say all the time that it's the best inland golf course in the country, and I firmly believe it. One of the best things about it, and I tell guests all the time who haven't been there before, is that there aren't 2 holes anywhere close to like one another, and there aren't 2 greens anywhere, close to being like one another. So you have 18 different holes kind of on this tight property, less than 130 acres. The greens are really cool, really tough to read, really tough to putt. And this time of year, May and October are the 2 best months to play. And we were in a great stretch with, cool nights and on the temperatures, hovering in the low 60s. So, they're running 14 and the wind's blowing a little bit, and it's really, really, really tough. So it'll be interesting to see next year if we get some dry weather in May for the USM, what those kids are able to do because they hit it so far. Let's see if they can, bomb and gouge their way around. And I got to caddy the last time the U.S. Amateur was there in 2005, so it'd be cool, maybe fingers crossed to get to caddy in that next year.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I caddied for a California guy, the 2005 Kevin Chappell, UCLA NCAA individual champ, which was fun. My original guy missed the cut, and then I was writing for a small newspaper in the city. And again, like I said before, I only lived a mile from the club, and I was in the shower getting ready to go to work. And my mom knocks on the door. This was, I don't think I didn't have a cell phone then, I don't think. And so my boss from Merion called and said, a caddy didn't show up. Can you meet us on the first green? So my mom drove me to the back of the first green, and I run up the little hill, and everybody's standing around the green. And this Merion member was carrying Kevin Chappell's bag for the first hole because his caddy didn't show up. And he just took his bib off and handed it to me, and I put it on. And he had this 50-foot putt, huge left to right swinger. And he was like, what do you think? I don't even think he introduced himself to me. He just asked me to read the putt, and I just pointed to his spot, and he buried it, and we were off. Yeah, it was cool.
Oh, that's a good one. Wow. But you didn't maintain being, a caddy as your career.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would have if I could have.
But then you got married.
I got married, and my wife was a teacher. And when I was writing for the newspaper, I was covering a ton of high school sports. So I would go go cover a high school baseball game, then go back to the office, write the story, and then help lay out the newspaper. So I was working pretty much, 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. most nights, and my wife was on the opposite schedule, and she quickly laid down the law and said, if this is something that we want to pursue, we probably need to make a change. And
it's going to be you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I was a coach, a basketball coach, even when, I just graduated high school. So I loved working with kids. And, as a shy person, I was a little hesitant to kind of dive into teaching, but you just kind of either, I think, have it or you don't. And somehow I'm able to bond and connect and motivate, 10 to 12-year-old kids. I have a hard time still speaking in front of adults, but my time in the classroom is great. It's kind of like the doors closed, and it's our own little world, and you're able to be who you want to be and let the kids see that and let the kids kind of let down their guard, which is what it's all about. If you create a great environment where the kids are ready to be themselves and, to take risks, and you're going to get them to do great things. So I've enjoyed that over the last 15 plus years. And I still work at Merion too as one of the assistant caddy masters, but teaching's my full-time job.
But are you teaching writing to these kids?
I taught 6th grade English and language arts, so reading and writing for a little more than 10 years. And then the last few years I switched over to math because it was just a little bit less of a workload. And with young kids and another job, it was really hard to give it everything I had. When you're grading 90 essays every week, and it's a lot.
Oh, but math you can
manage. It's much easier to grade.
Yeah.
But I miss it for sure. I miss teaching ELA.
Interesting. And you're still writing though, and out came a book. Yeah, I took a sabbatical to finish my master's about 3 years ago, and I had some extra time, so I finished the manuscript, and then I shopped it around to a few publishers, and this small independent press from Austin picked it up. So that was like a year and a half, maybe 2 years process, just editing and chopping it down and proofreading. And, it was really, really tough to go back in and reread my work. I've always hated that. Even when I was a student, just hated reading what I wrote, and when I was a journalist too. But, your reputation kind of stands on the product you put out, right? So if it's full of, grammatical errors that, an editor's not catching at 2 a.m, it's going to hurt your credibility. Especially like in 2025 with so much social media, people are going to just ram you with posts, about you didn't catch this capitalization mistake or you used this word incorrectly or whatever. So I really tried to force myself to go back and proofread, as carefully as I could, with the help of the publisher, because I wanted it to be a great product. I get it.
Yeah. So I got it done. It came out June 17th, and the response has been great. I'm going to see if I can keep pushing it and get into the hands of as many kids as possible. I think it's a great book for kids who know golf already, and as well as for those who've never picked a club up before. I try to give, as much explanation on some complicated golf terms as I could, and tried not to make it too overwhelming or, hard to break down for the kids. Yeah, that was one of the goals. we're so close to the city here, and there's so many young people who are just, I think, kind of closed off from the golf world. The public golf scene in Philly isn't great, and it's going to be elevated big time once the municipal course that's being redone right now, Cobbs Creek, opens up in a couple years. Gil Hansen, Jim Wagner, kind of tweaked the routing a little bit, bringing it back to how it was in 1916. It's a really it was one of the best municipal courses in the country when it opened up. We had Hugh Wilson, who designed Merion, came and did some work designing the golf course at Cobbs Creek, and he brought in some of the other architects from Philly, William Flynn and George Thomas and Tillinghast and Crump, who did Pine Valley. All those guys came to the site at Cobbs Creek and gave their 2 cents about what they could do to build a great golf course. And it was a phenomenal golf course. The land is unbelievable, tons of elevation changes, a cool creek that flows through the property. And it's going to be, one of the top 50 golf courses in the country, public or private, I think, when it opens. It has that potential. And it's the Tiger Woods is involved. His learning lab, there's one in Anaheim, California. His second one opened in the spring here in Philly. So, there's a big education piece too, and they're going to teach some kids how to play golf. So if I can use this book to help reach some kids too, then I'm doing something well.
Well, it's interesting you talk about reaching out to kids, getting kids, but I'm telling you, this is an entertaining book for adults as well.
Awesome.
And if you have kids at home, especially if people who are listening, if they have a kid that is interested in golf or want to get interested in golf, or the parents want the kids to get interested in golf, and they like to read these teen novels and whatnot, this is a great one, because I'm sure there's not a lot of golf content for teenagers.
Yeah,
in novel form.
Yeah, I thought so too, and I think it's also great hopefully for kids who are interested in golf or want to get interested in golf but aren't readers. I remember as an English language arts teacher, there were so many kids who just got turned off to reading because we were spending 90 minutes a day just dissecting every single word an author chose to use, and why did a character do this and why did the setting change, and they just got turned off to reading. They lost their love for it because they were asked to do so much analysis. And I really tried to write this book in a way that the kids could follow the plot without any problems. They didn't have to stop and reread and ask themselves what's happening here, why did the character do this. It was just an easy, light read. The kids could relate to the character. There's an antagonist, this old crotchety member at the club who battles with the 10-year-old. And I think I did a really good job of creating that old antagonist. His name's Hal Rustin, and he's based on a few guys who I knew at Merion when I was a kid, and some guys from Edgemont Country Club. Which
well, I wanted to get into Hal and where did he come from? Is this something that it's kind of like a movie character.
Yeah.
Where he came from, but it's like there's got to be something behind this, right?
Yeah, I won't name any names, but when I was a kid, like there were members at Merion who were really old school, and it was their way or the highway, and if you were the caddy, they wanted you to carry the bag and clean the clubs and give them the right yardage, and if you said a word other than that, they were going to jump down your throat, or they were really quick to pick out something that you did wrong, or something that you could have done better. So I definitely
you kept caddying after that.
Well, that was maybe 5% of the membership, and it's changed over time, right? 99.9% of the membership now is phenomenal. Everywhere you go, you're going to have some tough characters. But when I was a kid, there were a lot of old school guys who again liked things a certain way, and just the kind of the caddy player dynamic has changed. I think overall in golf, there's more of a collaborative relationship rather than just the member, the guest you're caddying for telling you what to do. This is what I want. Give me this information now. Don't talk to me. Other than that, I think it's there's a bond most of the time that forms pretty quickly, once the member or the guest trusts you and knows that, you're there to help them, especially at Merion where, there are so many blind shots and it's such a difficult course that if you can't trust the caddy, no matter how good of a player you are, you're in trouble.
Right. Absolutely. I had a question in my head and now it's not there anymore. Okay. So we can talk about one of the things that the character in the book is Phillie Phenom. We haven't even mentioned the name of the book.
Yep.
Where'd that
Phillie
come
Phenoms.
from? Was that you or the editor created that name?
That was mine. Work? I wanted, a catchy title, so the alliteration I think works there. And, the title of the book comes out at the end. And I just really thought that it worked. I was hesitant at first to include the word Philly because I didn't want to limit the audience. But,
Sure.
The more I thought about it, I didn't think it was a big deal. And I think it fits. I don't know what else I would have called the book. If I did
the fact that it's
Phenoms.
Philly and not Philadelphia or Merion or anything like that, kind of it works because it could be a person from Philly living anywhere. I mean, the Phillie Phenom, it could be that.
Yeah.
I find it interesting. Again, you talk about that it was partly your story growing up. You pulled from it, but the main character here. He would draw golf holes. He would design golf holes. Mm-hmm. Is that part of your story as well? How did that come about?
I'm a terrible artist. Terrible. Like I can't even draw stick people. So I definitely didn't draw any golf holes. But
Let's
I used
go to math.
Right. Yep. But I used to, make like a miniature golf course in my house, like going up, not up the stairs, going down the stairs and through different rooms and down the hallway. And then my backyard was not huge, but big enough where I could make a couple little golf holes, chip and putt holes. And then, as I got older, maybe like an 80-yard pitch shot. And then in the book starts out, where the Lee is at his elementary school kind of hitting balls on the fields there. And I used to do that too. Just go up before, I was able to go to this golf club my dad was a member at. I used to go up to our elementary school in the summer and just knock balls around. And then I got my friends to come and do it too. And then before we knew it, we made a golf hole from the top of this hill down to one of the baseball diamonds. We dug a little hole in the pitcher's mound, and that was the hole. So we definitely did that too until one of my friends broke one of the windows in the school, and that story's in the book too.
Yes, it is.
And then we kind of stayed away from her for a little while, and then I talked about this in the book a little bit that. There was a sign that got put up that said, no golfing on school grounds after that window got smashed by one of my buddies. We didn't get in trouble or anything, but they figured out that it was probably from a golf ball. And by then I was old enough, to start going to this club, Edgemont Country Club, with my dad. And then, when I started caddying at Merion when I was 14, I used to play at Merion's other course, the West course, on Mondays and in the summer. And I spent a lot of time at this place that I talked about before, this municipal course in the city called Cobb's Creek. My dad would drop me off and I would go and, mess around on the range and the practice green. And they had two courses too. And one of them was pretty bare bones. So you used to go out and do whatever you wanted out there. And then, kind of hang out and have lunch in the clubhouse and listen to stories and people argue about who won this bet, who lost this bet. And that, like Edgemont, the course that the course in the book is based off of, where there were just so many different people from all walks of life. Cobb's Creek was like that too. You had people coming from the city, who could, maybe just afford to pay their green fee, and then you had people coming from the suburbs who weren't a member somewhere, but were it was a doctor or a lawyer, playing with, just these average people, and it was a really cool place to learn how to play.
Are you still getting free golf at Merion? Is that why you keep pulling carrying bags?
I'm very, very fortunate. I've been an assistant caddy master since 2009. So in the summer, if I'm closing as the caddy master, if people are off the golf course, I'll sneak out and play a few holes from 7 o'clock or so until dark. So that's definitely a big perk. I can pretty much play when I want as long as I don't do anything stupid.
If a Golf Smarter listener finds you at Merion and says, "Hey, I heard the podcast,"
yes,
can you?
I could help. I could help them out if they're nice to me.
Okay, there you go. There's your message right there. You want to go out and play at Merion? You have an in now. You just got to mention Golf Smarter.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things, that there's people who come from all over the country and all over the world. Sometimes they fly in on their private plane and play and then fly off. And
that's not a Golf Smarter listener. I can almost be assured of that. And if you do have your own plane, please write to me. golfsmarterpodcast@gmail.com, and let's make a date to go play golf. You can pick me up here at Noss Field in Nevada.
There you go.
That would be fun. Have you ever been a golf instructor?
No, but I was a high school golf coach for like 6 years. So I could, I think my index is a little over 5. So I'm on a good day, I can shoot, 75, and on a bad day I could shoot, 85.
That's golf.
Yeah, exactly. So when I was a high school golf coach for 6 years, and my dad was my assistant, which was pretty cool. I didn't pay him. He was my volunteer assistant. So, we used to help kids on, alignment and grip and tons of course management stuff. Not too much on swing, unless, it was clear that somebody was coming over the top, or doing something, blatantly obvious like that. But, as long as you can help the kids, care and focus on every shot and really focus on course management, you're going to get them to put up good numbers. Our home course was Merion's second course, the West course, and then we played a lot at the Cobbs Creek Municipal course too. So it was fun to get to do that for 6 years before we had our third daughter, and my wife said, "Please stop."
I'm curious because when I go through the book, and I mentioned this already, but there's a lot of great little golf nuggets, instructional golf nuggets in the book. And that's why I was asking if you've taught, because, that's a lot of what I'm trying to do here with the podcast is get nuggets for my own game, right? I'm not a golf professional. I just have a lot of questions. So I look through the gamut of the golf world to get insights and instruction and things. And there are some things, like here, chapter 28, page 219. When putting from front to back, the ball usually moved right to left here. But when you get far enough over to the left side, it's straightened out and sometimes even sloped ever so slightly the other way. I mean, this is a subtle way of helping us read the green. There's a lot of these things in the book. So was your primary motivation on this to tell a story or to give golf instruction?
Yeah, both for sure. I figured that it'd be boring if I just said, okay, let's talk about green reading, right? If I wrote some kind of, nonfiction instructional story for 10 to 15-year-olds. So I tried to weave in those little, instructional bits, like you mentioned, into the story. As Lee was kind of learning the game and getting better at the game, these are things that he picked up from his dad and from, some other people at the club. And I wanted to, tell that in a way that was easy to understand for the reader, right, through Lee's words. And like I said before, I wanted to make it a light, easy read. So every word I chose was something that, I really paid great attention to and asked myself, is this a word a 10-year-old kid would say? And thankfully, since I've been a 6th grade teacher for so long, I've been observing, 10 to 12-year-old kids for a long time. So it was easy for me to write in a language, I think, that, those kids would understand. And the little things like, if you're just learning how to read greens, right, and you dump a bucket of water on the green, where's the water going to pool? You find the low point on the green, and, if you're really unsure of which way a putt's breaking, maybe pick that way, where they think the water would end up. So little things like that. Elevation changes, adding and subtracting yardage and paying attention to the wind. I weave those things in there too. Just because those are much more important than, where your hands are supposed to be at impact and, those kinds of things. Course management, I think, is a way for people to shave strokes without, beating balls on the range for hours and hours and hours, don't you think?
That was the primary premise of this podcast. I had, because I was new to golf. I didn't start playing until I was in my 40s. And it was like,
wow.
I figured if you understand course management, the strategy of golf, and you have a strong mental game, emotional game, that you can lower your scores faster than if you just work on swing mechanics.
Yeah, I remember.
And that's been supported the
Yeah,
entire time.
100%. When I was writing full time, the publisher that I worked for owned a little golf magazine in Philadelphia, and I was the staff writer for that magazine. And I interviewed Bob Rotella once.
Wow, I never got to do that.
It was really cool. It was me, another writer, and him, for like an hour, just firing questions at him. And obviously there are exceptions to this, but he said if you went to the range at a tour event and you took away the nameplate, so you didn't know who anybody was, and you just went up and down, and watched each person swing the golf club, except for like Jim Furyk or Tiger or somebody like that, who you knew what their swing was like, right? You wouldn't know if they were the 5th best player in the world or the 505th best player in the world because they hit the ball so well. Again, there are exceptions. Some are, unbelievable ball strikers, but for the most part, they could hit the ball just as well, no matter where they were on the money list, right? And so something had to separate them, and it's the mental game. Can you do it when it matters most, right? And can you manage your way around the golf course? Can you swallow your pride and play for 4 rather than kind of going for a pin tucked behind a bunker or over the water hazard or something. So he talked about that, and he said you can't recognize the 5th best player from the 505th best player in the world. So something has to separate them, and that's what it is. Mental game for sure.
Oh, that's an excellent tip.
Yeah.
The dad in the book, I'm bouncing all over the place here.
No,
the dad in the book is he's an enigma to me in the sense that he's a great golfer.
Mm-hmm.
We're not giving away the ending. He's a great golfer, but he doesn't play much.
Right.
He doesn't apparently need to, but I mean, he's kind of aloof about the game itself. The main character, the kid, is really attached to his grandfather, right? I mean, that's the relationship and how his interest and his passion for golf grows is through the grandfather. But the dad, how much of that is your story?
That isn't, very close to my story. My dad, like I said before, played, all the time from the time as far back as I can remember. Yeah. And he was great about bringing me to the golf club or taking me to Cobbs Creek and dropping me off there. So I don't know. I think it was just something that kind of developed. I wanted there to be some conflict with, the dad wanted to play, but, had other things going on in his life that prevented him from playing. And that allowed Lee to kind of be at the club by himself for a lot of the time because I wanted him to have, a bunch of run-ins with the antagonist. And I wanted the grandfather to kind of, be a part of that conflict too. And, he has a little backstory with Hal Rustin. So you're the first person that's asked me that. And I'm glad I'm able to reflect on it because I don't think I intended to do that when I started out, but it just kind of developed, and I thought it worked well. How the dad's being pulled a couple different directions, raising a family, working, and he wants to play. He loves the game, but not as much as he did when he was younger before he had kids, and that's something I'm going through. As a 44-year-old with 3 kids, it's very, very tough to get away, especially since I have 2 jobs to play golf, for 4 hours. So like I said, I play a lot of like 2, 3, 4 holes at the end of the night. And then I try to take a couple of big trips a year. So I try to make it count when I do play.
And how old are your kids?
I have 3 girls, 13, 9, 6.
Any of them interested?
The younger 2 like it. I can bribe them with, a ride in the golf cart, a soda, a chocolate chip cookie or something, some ice cream afterwards. But they'll also
sugar if you come out and play golf with me.
Yeah, they'll hack it around the backyard, and then in the summer we go on vacation to this little place in the mountains where there's a really cool old William Flynn course. So they'll hang out with me for an hour or so. But I'm not going to force it on them. My oldest had a great swing when she was a kid, but her friends don't play, so it's hard for her to kind of, pick out that as her sport when she's trying to find her way. But
no, we're not going to spoil the story, but the antagonist at the club and the grandfather, I thought for sure the grandfather was going to run him over on a golf cart or something. I'm not giving anything away, but I thought for sure this guy was going to get hit in the head with a golf club.
Yep. Yeah, I figured there could be
creep.
something like that would happen, but I didn't want to make it too
No, you got to remember your
PG-13.
audience, right?
Yeah.
Right. And how's the book being received?
Pretty well. One thing that I need to start pushing, to be honest with you, is the reviews on Amazon, which I guess are really important. But to me,
Really important.
I'd rather hear great things like you mentioned, that you enjoyed it. So I've gotten a lot of positive verbal feedback. I've won a few awards that I applied for. So
like what?
Let's see. I won a Pencraft Award for summer. Let's see, preteen best summer fiction award. I should have these, a list of them. I just got a 3rd place award for something called the Collective of Independent Publishers and Authors. I've won a couple other local awards. So it's nice to have that confirmation that I did something well, because even when it got published, right, that was the first hurdle, right, getting a publisher to pick it up. So I said, okay, there's something there. And then when we went through the publishing process, I had some of my former students read it, and they said, okay, this is interesting, but we're not golfers, so, we don't know, if it's going to be relatable to those kids too. And then, when I submitted it for some more awards, and won a few, I was like, okay, somebody thinks it's, worth reading too. So I'm just happy that all that hard work has paid off, even if it's not paying off with dollars and cents.
Well, it depends what you're motivated by doing, and you wrote a book to get a great story out there, and you really did it. Again, the book is called Phillie Phenom by Nate Oxman. I'm sure it's available at local bookstores. We'll order it for you if they don't carry it, but you can get it on Amazon, I'm sure.
Yep. Amazon and other retailers online, right. Target, Walmart, all the Barnes & Noble.
Excellent. Well, again, I really enjoyed it, and I have a nephew that this book is going to definitely be going to.
Awesome.
He's a 12-year-old kid who is incredibly passionate about golf, and I think this is the perfect book for him. So
great.
I'm going to do that, and I'm really glad that I ended up reading it because I enjoyed it tremendously, and I hope everyone else thinks about it for this holiday season. If you have young people in your life that are interested in golf, get them this book. They'll really enjoy it. Nate, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Congratulations. Good luck for the future.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it very much.